Democratic candidates are turning their attention to the upcoming contest after Senator Bernie Sanders managed to win a narrow victory in New Hampshire's primary on Tuesday. Next up, Nevada. The state's caucuses are on Saturday, February 22nd. A few days later, voters will head to the polls for South Carolina's primary. For more on all of this, I want to bring in CBS News 2020 campaign reporters LaCrai Mitchell and Alex Tin. LaCrai is in Columbia, South Carolina, and Alex is in Carson City, Nevada. LaCrai, let's start with you. There in South Carolina, Senator Bernie Sanders, he came in first in New Hampshire, but not by much. What does this mean for his campaign heading into your state?
It means that he gets to come in saying that he's had strong showings in these first couple of early states. He gets to come in saying that he's the front runner. You know, in terms of his team on the ground here, they've been one of the teams that have been here for the longest. I think coming into this cycle, they'll tell you that they had a renewed sense of urgency. So you have some folks here in the state that were part of his 2016 organization, but they really ramped up early on. And at points during this cycle, they were the largest team on the ground here in South Carolina. You have his state director is the daughter of one of South Carolina's state senators here, and they boast that 90% or so of their team is South Carolina natives. So they have people who know this area. I think the thing that to keep in mind, though, just like any other camp, it's been important to be on the ground early to build these coalitions. He's been in a position now where he's had his surrogates going across the state, just like Senator Warren has been here for a while now. Obviously, former Vice President Biden has a campaign infrastructure here. And so all of those teams that have been here early are now going to be using that time that they spent in the front end in these coming weeks to see what they can do with that. You know, Senator Bernie Sanders, he does have supporters here, no doubt. I mean, you can think of some of the larger events that he's had here when he did a town hall at the College of Charleston. To date, his town hall was still one of the largest in a series of town halls that they've had. 800 or so people showed out. Even this week, I've talked to voters who say Bernie Sanders is looking like the front runner. I think I would seriously consider him. On the other hand, you have representatives like Representative Joe Cunningham from here in South Carolina, who said today that South Carolinians do not want a socialist. And so there's definitely something to be said that he will have to come in here and work just like everyone else, because for every supporter that he also has some folks here who don't think that he'd be able to attract moderates in a way that some of the other candidates might be able to.
Well, we know that former Vice President Joe Biden has a commanding lead there. But LaCrai, after bruising losses in Iowa and New Hampshire, he's trying to get people to focus on South Carolina. Let's listen to what he told supporters there.
I want y'all to think of a number. 99.9%. That's the percentage of African-American voters who have not yet had a chance to vote in America. One more number, 99.8. That's the percent of Latino voters who haven't had a chance to vote. So when you hear all these pundits and experts, cable TV talkers talked about the race, tell them it ain't over, man. We're just getting started.
So, LaCrai, given his overwhelming support among African-American voters, could any of the other candidates really challenge Biden's advantage in South Carolina? It sounds like Bernie Sanders certainly has the ground team to try and mount that kind of a challenge. Anyone else?
Yes, actually. Tom Steyer to date has the largest ground game here in terms of paid staffers, over 100. His wife just moved here this week and plans to be here through the South Carolina primary and after. And I think a lot of other teams would say that they are going to be in a position to try to mount that challenge. You know, Tom Steyer as well in recent polls has had a significant bump, enough for people to be talking about him more. I feel like I see his signs more. He's spent over $18 million in advertising here, so he's definitely put up a front. Pete Buttigieg, who did well in the first two early states as well, just today announced arguably his largest state endorser, with that of State Representative J.A. Moore. He says that they're expanding their team to 55 staffers, 6 field offices. So I think you know, even Biden's team has said from the very beginning that they're not taking any support for granted. And they've made it very clear even today on a strategy call that they had that they're planning on going hard here in South Carolina like they said they would the entire time. There's a bus tour coming soon. They plan to have him in the state and the entire week in the run up to the primary. And so they're not going to sleep and they're not taking this for granted because they know the stakes that are at hand. You know, he has to arguably do very well in this state because even voters and supporters that he has here in the state who have been saying, oh, his, you know, low showings in Iowa and New Hampshire aren't the end of the world because he's going to do well here. Well, he's got to do well here for those supporters to be able to maintain that theory of the case.
Fair. Let's turn to the Nevada caucuses. Alex, the candidate with the most recent growth is Senator Amy Klobuchar. She's now expanding her campaign staff there. And what do they have planned for their ground game?
So to be clear, there are a lot of campaigns who are increasing the size of their teams here in Nevada with just 3 days to go until early voting starts here in the state. Of course, Amy Klobuchar is one of them, and it's probably one of the biggest changes in terms of the size of the team that we've seen, going from just a handful of staffers a couple weeks ago to what they say is going to be 50 staffers on the ground by the time early voting starts on February 15th. But they have a lot of ground to make up here in Nevada, especially compared to mammoth teams like Bernie Sanders, who has 250 staffers here in the state and have been here for months, not only developing relationships, but remember, Nevada is a caucus state. That means that you have to recruit and train and retain caucus captains, caucus volunteers who can go into those precincts and make sure that not only do they rally support during the first alignment, but keep and grow their support during the second alignment in that coveted game for delegates that we know so well from Iowa. Amy Klobuchar has not had the staff or resources to do that until just a few days ago. And that is an uphill battle to climb, especially in these final few days until the Nevada caucus.
Well, we heard that Biden, some of his poor showing in Iowa was blamed exactly on not having those caucus chair people to rally that support. So it's interesting, that perspective, Alex. I also want to ask you about Pete Buttigieg's campaign. He's also ramping up his efforts there. Does he face any particular challenges in Nevada?
Well, for a long time, Pete Buttigieg has been growing quickly here. They have a lot of offices and they have a lot of staff. They say they're going to be up to 100 staff by the time early voting starts. One of the challenges that Pete Buttigieg has faced, especially up against other candidates like, say, former Vice President Joe Biden or Senator Elizabeth Warren, is that we haven't seen Pete Buttigieg pick up quite as much support from the state's elected officials, especially from statewide and prominent party leaders here in Nevada. Of course, that's starting to change if today is any indication. The former chair of the Clark County Democratic Party, Chris Miller. Clark County is, of course, the most populous county in Nevada. It's the one that encompasses Las Vegas in southern Nevada. Chris Miller endorsed Pete Buttigieg today, praising not only the candidate, but, of course, what he thinks is backing a winner here in the state. So we'll see if those fortunes continue to change Pete Buttigieg in these final days as we approach the Nevada caucus.
LaCrai Mitchell, Alex Tin, thank you both.